it's about that problem solving. It's not about like the hours that you're putting in. It's like how much can you actually achieve through that time. And so for me, the learning part is probably where I'm, the most energized.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying this show, do me a quick little favor and leave us a rating and review. All right. This information helps more people find the show, but more importantly, it helps us get feedback to help create the content you need to grow and drive your real estate investing business. And if this is your first time listening to the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Andy Mcmullen. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button today. Today, we have Andy Mcmullen with Legacy Acquisitions. Now, Andy has been involved in real estate for many years, and he's a person who has focused on value-add investments and is now focused on build-to-rent communities. Let's welcome to the show, Andy Mcmullen.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. An honor to be with you, man. Really is. I've been listening to
Absolutely.
the show for a long time, so this is cool.
Absolutely, Andy. It's great to have you on the show. I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in this game, John, about it's going on 25 years now. I mean, I started off on the brokerage side, kind of quickly evolved into development, probably early 2000s. As you remember what that time, I know you were in advertising, but you remember what that time was in 2008, the kind of water stopped for everybody. So as we kind of clawed our way back, we were doing multifamily projects from really 2011 all the way up to around 2017. That's kind of when we started to see, hey, maybe there's some happening with suburbanization of these communities. Maybe there's some happening with this younger generation not caring about so much with, the picket fences and the American dream of owning a home. Maybe they just want the new stuff, the new cool stuff. And so we started really kind of looking at built to rent as a concept. I mean, I remember being in that space in 2008. The same folks that kind of got us into that mess were the same folks buying, properties for 50 cents on the dollar, but they were kind of spread out in these scatter sites, right? And so we would pick up a couple here that were maybe 50, 60 cents on the dollar. But then right around 2016, 17, you started to see a lot of those larger companies developing projects side by side and then really kind of being able to efficiently manage those projects. So that's kind of when the light started to turn on for us.
I love to hear that, man. So 25 years experience in this space, right? You talked about the mid to late 2000s when, the economy obviously shifted and looking at how your investment strategy kind of shifted as well and paying attention to what some of those big companies were doing, right? So they were, doing deals that got us into that mess, but coming out of that, they were buying land and they were doing more development and slowly started to focus on kind of these build to rent communities, which is where you're focused right now. Talking about legacy acquisitions and how do legacy acquisitions make that transition from kind of the more traditional approach to value add multifamily or value add real estate, and then transitioning into more build to rent communities?
Yeah, what's something that I've heard you talk about a lot, and I talk with my folks and team and any mentees that want to listen to what I have to say, is for a long time, John, I would try to do way too much of that stuff by myself. I would have partnerships, but I would try to do things maybe I wasn't as great at, right? Maybe I was slower at, I would say. And so I just started kind of focusing on really building out a team. And as kind of we've heard this many times, but the part that's not talked about is not the kind of it's the leverage time. Like you could probably even do things now that are much speedier if you just did it yourself, but that's short-sighted, right? Because you're not considering all of the iterations, all that kind of a leverage. If maybe your team does it 75% as well as you or as fast as you, that you can really grow exponentially. So when we built Legacy, we were kind of, hey, let's take a few of these top guys in areas that we really need help with: asset management, um, at property management, managing the construction process. Let's talk about, maybe we bring in people that have engineering background or marketing background, and let's really kind of think about this as a professional business as opposed to a lifestyle business, which in many times people transition from another, I like to say another sport. They've got these skills that are the same, that help them build their business, but they're from another sport, and they think that, hey, I can do all the same things that I was doing there. Now, a lot of those, they can just basically help a team grow, and then they all benefit from. So Legacy was kind of born out of that, where we can buy some properties, we can raise some capital, but let's really try to focus on maybe, being the lead on some of these projects that we had been in the past. Let's focus on teaming up with some of the best operators that are doing it in this particular market. Let's bring on a tax consultant. Let's bring on a private partnership guru that can kind of help us take advantage of all of these funds that are just left for building housing in these communities that grossly need it. So that have been grossly underserved. So that's kind of what how Legacy was born.
Yeah, I love that you talked about one recognizing that certainly you could have, continued down the path of building your own company by yourself and doing all the work, but recognizing that, what, that leverage time, that leveraged equity, if you can, bring on someone and they can do it 75, maybe 80% as good as what you could do, that's enough. And I think so often people, you just see the flaws, right? And it's like, they can't do it quite as well as I can, so I got to keep on. And the reality is you really limit your ability to grow when you do that. You were able to recognize that and then decide, okay, who are the people we need to partner with? How do we expand and how do we build this company in a way that allows us to be a professional organization as opposed to a lifestyle business? I want to dig in a little bit more there, right? Because I think that's a huge thing that some people have to think about. And one, it's asking yourself that question. I think so many people, that first priority is maybe just to quit their day job. Hey, I just want to leave my W-2 and, I'm going to use real estate to do that. And they don't really think about the company they want to build or the lifestyle they actually want to live. They just realize they don't want to do this anymore. And this is a path to leave that. Can you talk to me more about the intentionality of what you wanted to create with legacy acquisitions? Maybe even the partnership or the structure, the people you brought in initially to make this dream a reality.
Yeah, and I always tell people, and I know it's not the most popular opinion, but if you are ready to just give up all of that you can for that income, you think that you're all in. You think that you're making all the best decisions because you've got no other choice. But what really tends to happen is you start making decisions that maybe pay you a little bit more, but aren't for that long term kind of, that long term solution. So I always tell people, if you've got a W-2 and it's working and you're able to stay in, work those. I know you started early, late, you finished up, so that you're kind of getting those hours in between, and then you still got the paycheck, so that you're not forced to make some of those decisions. People, start in the syndication space, as you know, as a capital raiser, and they're like, hey, after my acquisition fee, now I got to basically wait. I might not get very much cash flow, and so they start doing flip deals, or they start taking another side gig, right? So I always try to have people consider, like, what's your operating system going to be? What are those rocks that are going to get you to that stage where you can replace that income? So it might be, hey, I need to be part of a team that's making X amount in revenue, or X number of deals, so that I'm getting X number of acquisitions. I can't mix them all. They can't all be development, right? Because they're all development, then you might not be getting paid for 2-3 years, or they can't all be value add because now the margins are thinner. So I think people got to kind of think about it from the big picture. And the other thing that I want to say is, like, back to that point that you made, John, is like, there's people out there that are driving in their car and they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, I could do that, but I know that this person that I'm kind of working with can't do it as well. And there's every person experience that's just part of our human condition. You want to have your conversation with your wife, you see your kids stumbling down the road, you know that they shouldn't be stumbling. And if you can bite your tongue, which sounds so easy, but is not, ultimately it's going to make your life better and the organization's better. So that was the hardest part for me. I know, imagine it's probably a hard part for you, especially coming from the business where you're making a lot of these creative decisions and you're like, oh man, that's not going to work. I know it. So those are kind of some of the things that I think about when people are trying to plan their next move out of the sport that they were in.
It's interesting too because there are different hats that we wear, especially as entrepreneurs, because there's the entrepreneur hat, which you get it done, right? You roll up your sleeves and you figure it out, especially if you feel pretty knowledgeable on how to make something happen. But then there's the managerial or the leadership role. And when you're a leader, sometimes you've got to weigh, hey, do I get this done the way I know it needs to be done, or do I allow this person to learn and to grow and give them some space where they can make some mistakes, as long as they're not catastrophic, right? But where they can make some mistakes and that they're going to do a better job moving forward. And it's tough and it's challenging, especially when those results impact the bottom line. So I think there's definitely a fine line to walk when it comes to that. I had a call this morning with a team member, and it was the same kind of thing where they wanted to try something. I was 98% sure it wasn't going to work. But we structured in a way where I said, all right, listen, here are my concerns. Here's where I see the challenges. I would advise you to think about this as you pursue it. Uh, as I, we can't, that was a few months ago. We had the call this morning. It did not work as I expected. But they learned, right? And they were able to grow, and that's something that we have to balance. So it's always tough as an entrepreneur, but I think it is really important to be both a leader, because as you said, you can't do it all yourself. You've got to be able to empower other people and allow them to grow. Talk to me more about the structure of legacy, right? How many partners do you have? Like, what
Yeah.
what are you all working on right now?
Yeah, so we got a team of 12. We focus on mostly the asset management and raising the capital for deals that are at this point mostly development projects. So, you think about, we're building, 100 to 250 units in communities in the South. So Alabama, Louisiana. Sorry, no, these new dogs here.
You're all good.
So that's kind of been our team is comprised of people that are kind of managing the construction process, managing the asset management after we've stabilized the property, and then we've got people that are handling kind of the entitlements, engineers, all of the kind of subs. So if you think about, legacy would be the hub, and then we would have potentially boots on the ground if we're doing stuff in the South or doing stuff in, Midwest. We still have some stuff in Southern California, but part of the reason we wanted to transition out of that was when rent control was enacted. We kind of saw a lot of opportunities going to be there in the South. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the so if you think of kind of legacy as the main hub.
And so asset management and raising capital is kind of the main functions. You talked about, overseeing the construction, the entitlements, all the elements that go into building out these communities. How are you acquiring these deals? Are you searching for the land? Do you have an acquisitions team, or are you kind
Yeah.
of working with kind of a JV or some other strategic partnership to acquire the deals?
Yeah. So typically, so when people think about development, they're thinking about, gosh, that's so risky because I'm basically buying land in an area where I've got, maybe the mayor, decides that he doesn't like this in his neighborhood, or maybe he's got, maybe he's going to be out of office in 4 months, right? So what we try to do is we'll buy land. So we'll first get an option for the land. So let's just say we'll go to John. We'll say, hey, look, you got 30 acres here. We'll give you, I don't know, they'll give you $20,000 to tie it up for 6 months while we try to get it entitled. So what that means is that we want to get all of the soil tests, we want to get all the engineering tests, we want to see if this is a viable project. And while that 6 to 9 months your land is tied up, we also need to talk to the city council. We need to talk to the mayor. We need to figure out whether this is a project they even want. And then there's the iterations on top of that, in addition to that, that are like, hey, I know you guys want to do 100 units, but we need to have 150, or we need to have we need to have a more simple kind of 3-2 bedroom layout, or we need to have so all of those kinds of go into the very front end. We put all of our own money once the project's been approved. So it goes to that kind of city council meeting. They say, hey, we like your project. Here's a stamp of approval. Then we purchase the property with our own money, with the GP's money. And then we'll finish out with our own money the engineering and the environmental. That usually takes about another 3 months or so, right? Because you got all the approvals, but now you need to get all the kind of final testing done. And then at that point, that's when we like to take it out to investors. So fully entitled, with engineer, with drawings. Now we're starting the horizontal structure. So that's all the streets, roads, utilities. That's typically when we take it out to investors. So I'll open it up if you got any questions on that. But one thing I would say is, John, that's typically the most challenging part of a capital raise, because and the project in general, because there's so much art that goes into a streets, roads, utilities. How much can I push a city government, a city agency? How much can I push a utility? Louisiana Quality Board changed their requirements halfway through when we were done with a sewer plant. So things like that are kind of happen. It's not the Bob the Builder stuff in the vertical phase that's a little more predictable.
So let me try to recapture that, because
Yeah.
one, I'm realizing my penmanship really needs improvement. But I'm gonna go through my notes here, right? So you
Probably
basically
means I need to tighten up the answers a little bit. That's what.
no. This is excellent. So I'm playing back what you said, because I thought it was really, really intriguing, right? So the very first step here is you're getting an option for the land, and I'm going to come back to that point. You get the option for the land. Maybe you're putting down $20,000 or something like that. From there, you're going to try to get it entitled. So you're working with the community. You're going to ask, what are they looking for? Talk to the mayors, the city council, whoever those key stakeholders are. You're getting that information. From there, if that checks out, the general partnership team is going to actually purchase the property and use your own capital to do that. Then you're moving over to the engineering and the environmental reports. From that point, now you're going to start working on, actually getting this thing from the roads and getting kind of the vertical version of this, or horizontal, I should say, of this laid out. So you're getting the roads, you're getting the sewers, the plumbing, all those kind of things. And at that point is when you're going to bring this opportunity to investors, where they have a chance to come in and partner as this thing is ready or getting ready to be to break ground and be built up vertically. Did I capture all that right?
You got it, man. You got it. You
I
ready to
love it.
start your development? I know you already
There
are
you go.
working on
Right. So
you
a
got it.
couple quick questions, right? Just for clarity's sake. So one, you mentioned kind of the option for the land starts there. When you're making that deposit, I mean, I use the word deposit. Is that a refundable deposit? Is that a non-refundable deposit? How long do you typically have on that option to exercise it?
Yeah, so I mean, it varies we're working in the South, John, so land is a little uh less expensive there. So there's usually a little bit more room to negotiate. If we were doing something in California, as you know, or Texas, some of you're basically, hey, you start from now, pay me this, it's non-refundable. Hopefully you guys get your approvals, right? So each market's a little bit different, but typically where we like to play is in that range where it's, $20 to $50,000 option, that at that 6 to 9 months, we either give them that money, and take the project moving forward, or we bow out. So it would be, a timeline attached to when we'd have to make that decision. Now, many sellers, if they do have time and they've owned that land for a while, and they see our track record and the net worth and liquidity, and they feel like they're comfortable with us, oftentimes they would be willing to extend. In some markets, that's not the case, right? Like we were to try to do what we're doing in California, it would be 3 years before we even got to a situation where we could put in the streets, roads, utilities, because you'd be dealing with so many regulatory bodies. Or even when we were doing stuff in Venice Beach years ago, you would have even a more powerful neighborhood council, right? Aside from even the city council and the mayor, right? You've got people that this is their backyard. So those are the considerations that we have. So I wish I could give you kind of more concrete, this is how we do it. Everything's a little bit of a negotiation. And that's part of why I say that the horizontal part of that, the streets, roads, utilities, you're kind of working with this nuanced, the seller, you're working with the nuanced kind of the city agencies, and then you're working with the councilman who might be living in one of these communities.
No, I think it's really helpful for people to understand, right? Because it's going to vary from market to market, but these things obviously take some time, and that's one of the reasons that they can be more profitable because there's a little bit more risk involved. There's a little bit more preparation and planning and creativity and all those kind of things versus maybe buying an existing structure. From the time you maybe put that land option out there to the time it's you kind of have your horizontal approvals. What are we, just ballpark range,
Yeah.
timeline? What are we typically looking at?
Yeah, so I always like to tell people that it's probably going to be somewhere from beginning to when we stabilize. Is like me stabilize meaning that we got tenants actually or residents actually in these units and they're starting to pay rent. Usually that's kind of a 36-month timeline. So if I'm to break it up, I'm saying, hey, you've got your 6 to 8 months, 9 months where we're just, working with this option, right? So that doesn't really touch the investors, timeline, right? They don't care what we've done before we meet them. So at that point, once we're ready to get the engineering, environmental, and start horizontal typically takes about 9 to 12 months. So that, depending on that market. And there's obviously the reason that I'm saying you're working in the South, you've got weather setbacks. In every market, you got setbacks of weather related, but you got weather setbacks, you got soil, because when you're doing horizontal, there's got to be a firm, and it's got to be dry. It's not like where in vertical you can continue building maybe half a day after it dries. We get into the weeds a little bit, but you can kind of see why there's a variance in the timeline for the horizontal streets, roads, utilities. So that's about a year. And then once we start the vertical, once we're ready to lay the foundations and produce the unit builds, I typically like to tell people we're gonna in our underwriting be about 6 to 10 a month, that 6 to 10 units a month, right? And typically what we try to do, provided that we have a really strong management team and leasing team, if we can build 15 units, then typically we can, either get further ahead in the schedule of what we told folks that we were, or if there were weather delays, catch up. So that's kind of where we need to be. And when I refer to, just for listeners that might be new, absorption, I'm just thinking of, we're gonna build the units, right? And then we're gonna need to put people in the units. And there's usually a delay in when we can actually get people in the units. And then once we've got the income that we need, now it's a stabilized project.
No, I love that, and thank you for taking the time to really specify and clarify what that time frame looks like to go from again having that land option to getting it stabilized, where you have it rented out, you have your residents there who are paying rent, and you kind of have the pro forma performance of the property taking place. Lots of work involved, right? Someone's listening to this is like, man, that seems like a lot, right? Part of the reason you're willing to do that work is because of the profit potential. Can you help just maybe
Yeah.
lay out how that profit potential looks and maybe how that compares to maybe investing in a traditional value add apartment?
Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting about a value add apartment is there are all of these same things, like especially if you're in a larger value add, you're looking at the yield on cost, right? When I say a yield on cost, I'm just referring to the amount that you're putting into that project, the total amount for the cost of the build, the cost of the improvements, everything that you've got in this bucket compared against whatever your net income is going to be. So you take your net income and you divide it by that total number. That's basically your yield on cost. So that becomes even more important in development because you've got basically these timelines that you're considering along the way. So I will say it sounds like a lot when I'm kind of describing it from 50,000 feet. But when you kind of think about if you've got a team that's handling your construction, you got a team that's handling your entitlement, you got a consultant that has this relationship with the mayor or the public partnership. That's part of the real estate. And so the uneven, or let's just say unfair advantage that somebody like John or I would have in putting these types of deals together is that you're able to leverage the skill sets of all these folks, and then you throw that all into the bucket, and hopefully you've kind of created this unfair advantage by being able to build something from nothing. So if I was to look at maybe kind of a simple value add, maybe in the a year ago, 2 years ago, you'd be in that, 18% IRR. You want to see a 20, something like that. Now, most investors shouldn't be a little bit leery if they're seeing something that's, more than 15, right? Or if it's higher, it's got a lot of guardrails in place, right? It's got, contingencies, etc. So for development, if you're thinking about, hey, I'm going to have my money tied up, I might not even see cash flow. I'll see wealth appreciation. They'll give me updates on what that is probably worth, but I'm not going to see actually cash in my pocket, maybe 24 to 36 months. So in that particular situation, I need to have a above 20 IRR with those same kinds of guardrails in place. And when we're looking at it, John, from an internal perspective, we want to make sure that we're seeing stuff in the mid 20s as an IRR, hopefully better. And that might sound, hey, that's so unrealistic in today's market. But if you're thinking that you're kind of building through these high interest rates and you're basically benefiting from the fact in a built to rent community, your operating expenses are typically in that 35 range as opposed to 50. The residents are typically staying longer, right? Usually they're stickier. They're about 2 to 3 years as opposed to one. If you consider all of those kind of factors, then you can kind of start to see, oh, you can also get additional dollars from the public partnerships. Costs might go down. So there's just more opportunities to screw up, of course, but there's also more opportunities for you to really bless a lot of the people, around you. So
Definitely sounds like some great upside potential. It takes a little bit more patience, but also takes a little bit more knowledge and relationships to navigate this. For someone who is interested in pursuing this, what's one thing that they should know before they go too far down this path?
yeah, that the the success of your project is going to be hinging on one, your relationship with your banks and the relationships with your subs or the people that are on the ground. So if you're coming in it, from another sport, as I like to say, and you're deciding, hey, look, I'm gonna dig in and make this happen, I would just say, please don't. Please get a team. Find a team that's already been doing this or consultants that have been doing this so that you're not kind of banging your head against the wall trying to convince investors, hey, I was successful in this realm because it does, as you know, John, you could hop on somebody else's deal as a GP and decide that you want to learn a ton or you just want to be there in name only. So it just only takes one or two deals. We have people that come in our organization. We open up the kimono, they add value, we add value, then they go on and do their own things. But I would be really careful unless you have a really high net worth and one other team member. The banks of this world are going to be a little bit more judicious in who they're giving that. I mean, 70% or 75%, and every step of the way they're going to be, we're submitting draw requests, right? We have to raise that capital. We have to spend that money up front, right? So it's almost like a little bit different for multifamily. If you raise $4 million, you're paying that $4 million before you even get your first draw, right? So that risky part of it is something that you really got to consider. Do you have the right people in the right seats helping you, with this kind of, development project?
Andy, I think those are great lessons. I know you've got a lot of resources available on your website. So if folks want to learn more, they can go to legacyacquisitions.com/resources. Great information available there. Andy, we're going to transition to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Okay.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Oh man. So I've been syndicating since like 2005, before the Jobs Act, right? Before you could just pick up the phone. And it was that I was in a Dallas deal. Every single thing that could go wrong went wrong, and most of it was my fault, right? I mean, all of it is ultimately my fault, right? But like dumb things that you, of course, John knows now because he's learned from all the idiots that have come before him, and I should have, right? But I didn't have a great relationship with the property manager, right? I thought I knew better. I didn't know how to lead. I didn't know how to coach. I wasn't in that backyard. I didn't realize how much Texans hated Californians. So I didn't realize that I was, persona non grata. But aside from that, like I didn't keep my eye on the finances. I had a partner who, I don't want to make it too gloomy, but he basically was a RIA, a registered investment advisor. He committed suicide. After he had committed suicide, we found out that he had basically, not just us, a lot of the companies and foundations that he'd worked for, he created a brand new account. He put our property into one of his RIA funds. And so we spent 2 years in legal battle. So what I learned from that, which is the more important thing, is that I could bounce back, right? Because a lot of people in that situation, I don't know. Sometimes you think, well, what's the inflection point and why did you bounce back? For me, there was really no other choice. But in doing that, I learned that, look, here's the things that you can work on and better yourself. But the other thing is, you have a loser. That's not the end of it. That's just, one loss of that 82 basketball season. That doesn't define your season. So that was probably a lesson. And then obviously, to be a little bit more careful in some of the decisions that I'm making. But had I had a team, had I had guardrails, had I had people to tell me that you're being an idiot, don't do that, we wouldn't have ran into those types of problems.
No, thank you for sharing
That's
that.
not lightning, right? That was like a rolling thunder.
Not lightning, but I think it was worthwhile and a lot of great information and value there. So I appreciate you sharing those details. All right. Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
What we're using, Monday.com, which for me is fantastic because I can go through every day how everybody else is doing, what were our rocks. We use the entrepreneurial operating system. If anybody's read Traction and kind of heard, there's a lot of operating systems that are out there that work, but we find that one works well. And Monday kind of pulls all the projects and tasks and links that we need so that we can kind of go throughout our day and knock things out.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Have you read it?
I have not, but it's very popular.
Yeah, I mean, like when I talked about earlier, this failure that I had, like most books are like how not to break your business. I had already broken my business, so what to do next? Like that's the book that I really get a lot of value. And then I also like to read every once in a while other stuff that's out there. I just think that you kind of get a different perspective. So some big, history books and Ray Dalio, that's a great book that came out a couple of years ago about kind of process. I'm a big process guy.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound, maybe you've probably heard it 100 times, but I'm a big morning, miracle morning guy where I like to get up early, read, it gives me some time before I get my kids off to school, exercise, read, and, those things are what people can never take away from you, right? These lessons that you're learning along the way. Charlie Munger, we've heard a lot about him in this last week as he passed away. His big thing was, how can I become a super learner? So if I'm constantly thinking about talking to the right people, reading books without ever feeling compelled to make a decision that's rash because I need to be working on something, let's consider that. And that's the part, right, John, that you probably learned as we're coming into entrepreneurial. It's about that problem solving. It's not about like the hours that you're putting in. It's like how much can you actually achieve through that time. And so for me, the learning part is probably where I'm, the most energized. So that's, for me, a Bible is important. The reading on other, and the exercise, the meditation I haven't got very good at, but the writing and the other stuff I've gotten pretty good at.
All right, give me your number one insight for build to rent investing.
Number one insight for build to rent investing, I think it's probably a life insight. It's trust yourself. And that sounds simple, but most people don't. They come into this business and they hear an expert tell them this thing, an expert tell them this thing, and they were super smart about some part of their career, but they haven't spent the time in the preparation and the understanding the nuance. So I would become derailed oftentimes by not trusting my instinct and listening to somebody who's, seemingly smarter than most things, but maybe not this thing. So that would be the one thing that I would say for folks to trust themselves.
That's great insight. I love that. Let's lighten the mood. Where are you located right now?
So I'm in San Diego.
San Diego,
it's a little gray out
California.
there. It doesn't look.
It's gray here too. So, well, listen, San Diego is one of my favorite cities. It's in my top 3 list. So, give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat in San Diego. It is.
Oh, interesting. That's great, man. LTH, which is basically on Oceanside Boulevard. All the restaurants. If you go, John, I'm in North County, so Carlsbad, Oceanside is kind of where we spend most of our time. But if you were just to drive along Oceanside Boulevard now, you've got your auto repair shops sitting next to chefs that are, I think there's even one Michelin restaurant there. So I would say that. I'm a big, we go all over a place. Enzo's barbecue, I like the barbecue there. And then burgers or pizza. I don't know, man. I think I'm gonna have to go like the simple habit. I mean, if you go to a lot of those places where it's kind of more like the high-end chef, you kind of feel like maybe you should be eating something else. So I like to go to places where they know exactly how to do it, and the habits for me that place.
I love it, man.
What about you, man? I'm curious,
options.
when I come to your hood, where do I need to go?
Oh man, so the one place I love, which is close to me, is it's a Thai spot called Spicy Thai, and it's family owned. They've actually, the last 2 years, they've closed for 30 days as the family has made a trip back to Thailand. So at some point this summer they'll close. So when I get word that that's happening, we try to go there a couple times that week before they disappear. But we love it. It's a great place. There's a couple other places downtown and throughout the city that I like, but Spicy Thai is the one that's my go-to for you.
Spicy Thai.
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. Well, Andy, great information, man. I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about your background, learning more about legacy acquisitions and your focus on build to rent, particularly just, walking us through the process. I think build to rent or development in general can be daunting for many investors. So I appreciate you kind of breaking it down. And it really comes down to building the right team members, right? Getting the right relationships, folks who know how to navigate the city dynamics, folks who actually know the construction side of it, the entitlement side of it, and understanding that you're certainly going to need longer time frames. But if you're willing to do that, the profit and the return projections could be certainly higher and more advantageous. So it's worth looking into. And if you're interested in learning more, you can check out legacyacquisitions.com/resources. Andy, thank you again for coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you and hope you have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, John. What an honor to be with you, man.